Section 1.4, quadratic equations. In this section, which is a very important section because everything we're going to study here, methods that we are going to be using throughout the semester, and actually you're going to be using in any coming up math courses that you will be taking after this. So here we have different methods, and we have to know each method different. So it's not like, okay, I know how to solve this quadratic equation in one method, I am done. I can always use that method if I feel like. No, we cannot do that because each method is used for different things, and we have to know each one, and by name, by the way. So the first method we're going to study here is the zero factor property. The zero factor property simply says if I have any two complex numbers, but remember real numbers are subsets of complex numbers, such that their product is zero, then one of them has to be zero or both. And what is so significant about this is that this is also used to be called in different classes solving by factoring. So the idea is to factor, and once you have a factor, so let's look at example 1 that is already done. So you factor, and once you have a factor, then it's a product. Something times something is 0, so it's either the first one is 0 or the second one is 0, and you solve and you get the 2. So let's the two solutions. So let's try example 2. 6x squared plus 7x minus 3 equal to 0. Again, I did not tell you that we're going to assume that you know how to factor from previous classes. That's a prerequisite. A very important prerequisite is factoring. So make sure, if you are not very up to date, review and make sure you know how to factor. Again, factoring is so important for this class. So we're going to factor. Just a quick way, I'm going to remind you. So 6x squared, it could be 6x times x or 3x times 2x. I feel like it has to be 2x times 3x. And the 3 is a prime, so the only way it can be is 3 times 1. So if I put a 3 here and the 1 here, I can see that 9 and 2, they're different. So yeah, that's going to work. So 3 times 1, and the bigger one is positive. Bigger meaning the one that gives me the 9, and the smaller one. So now we check it by outers and inners. Again, the way you factor is not, I don't care how you factor. You might have learned it with the box method. You might know by what I'm doing is trial and error. You can do any method you like. In college algebra, all I care about is that you factor. Again, the outers is 9x, inners minus 2x, that gives me the middle term. So it's either 3x minus 1 is equal to 0, and that gives me that 3x equal 1. Dividing by 3, it gives me that x is 1/3, so that's one solution. The other one is that 2x plus 3 equal to 0. Subtracting 3 from both sides will give me that 2x equal to -3. Dividing by -3x, dividing by 2, we get -3 over 2. So these are the two solutions. You have other examples I did for you. You can look at them, read them, and make sure. So I'll do a few of these problems. So let's do one more. I have a blank paper under each one because it's a see-through. Okay, so let's do another one, zero factor property. So I like this one because this is supposed to be easier, but students find it, get worried. So remember the word factoring. That's what we're doing. We're factoring because I need two things multiplied equals 0. So I can't open two parentheses because there's only two terms. This is a binomial. So what we do is we take the greatest common factor, and the greatest common factor is 3x. If you take that as a common factor, you're left with x minus 3 equals 0. Again, that's the zero factor property. Either 3x is equal to 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. Let's do this one first. So x is 3. I like to talk about this one. Well, we can divide by 3, so we get x equal to 0. Or how about using the zero factor property in your head? You have two numbers multiplied equals 0. One of them has to be 0. Well, obviously it's not the 3, so x has to be 0. Again, I just always like to mention that because it's different. Now the square root property, again, I'm gonna let you read it, and this is, boy oh boy, look how big I wrote it for you. Do not forget. So let's see. This is telling me that the solution of x squared equal to k, you can look at the work, is always gonna be either x is equal to the square root of k or x equals square root of negative k. Negative square root of k. I said it backward. Meaning, let's look at this that's already solved for you. If I say solve by the square root property, x squared equals 16, most of the students, if you're asked directly without remembering this, you will say that the solution is x equal 4. And you will forget about x equal negative 4. The idea here is that it's an unknown squared. And when we take the square root of both sides, okay, the square root of x squared is plus or minus x. So the solution is x equal plus or minus 4. We move the plus or minus to the right hand side. Okay guys, because if it's negative 4 and you square it, also you get 16. So I have two problems solved, and I'll do this one with you. So we have x squared equal to negative 144. By the square root property tells me x equal immediately plus or minus without thinking. Plus or minus the square root of 140 negative. Okay, let me take it immediately. We know that a negative is an I, or finally x is equal to plus or minus 12i, which is the square root of 144. But let's see how we're going to be using it for the next method this way, and it's very important. We have a parenthesis squared equals 6. Well, a parenthesis squared, it's anything. The rule, it says x squared equal to k, then x is equal to plus or minus square root of k. But x could be anything, could be a star. So if I have a star squared equal to k, then the star is equal plus or minus square root of k. Now I have x minus 4 squared equals 6. So by the square root property, whatever is squared, in this case is x minus 8, is equal to plus or minus the square root of 6. And now to solve this, you just add 8 to both sides. We always like the plus or minus to be in the middle, just cosmetic. And we're done because we cannot simplify that. Again, this method will be used for the next method. Solve by the square root property. Again, whatever is squared is always equal to plus or minus the square root of the other side. Square root of 24. Move, meaning add the 2 to both sides. Then we get 2 plus or minus square root of 24. Okay, I'll do it in 2 steps. And now, what is inside the square root? This is 6 times 4. And the 4 comes out as 2 root 6. 6 times 4. Okay. Okay, so you have all these problems solved for you. Now we're going to come to the most difficult method, and it is called completing the square. I'm going to do another video starting that. All right.